advantage to us in the form that the refrigerant will be always in superheated state and there won't be any wet compression. That is the advantage to us. Okay. Now, suppose there is subcooling also associated with that. By doing the subcooling, we get the advantage that the refrigerant which enters into the evaporator is at a temperature which is same as the evaporator temperature, but its dryness fraction is reduced, okay, by subcooling. Now this liquid vapor heat exchanger or LVHE as its name is, okay, this is installed between suction line and the liquid line. So you can see here what we have done, this line which is leaving the evaporator, this line is suction line. This is suction line, and the line which is leaving the condenser is liquid line. And what we have done, we have installed a heat exchanger between the suction line and the liquid line. This is a liquid vapor heat exchanger. It is mentioned here. Okay, it's a liquid vapor heat exchanger. Now there is another name for this also. It is also known as suction line liquid line heat exchanger. Okay, so its another name is suction line liquid line heat exchanger. Now what is the advantage of this? Now first of all, let us try to understand what actually is happening and uh, by installing this liquid vapor heat exchanger. So first of all, the temperature after the evaporator is about, I can say, could be minus 5 degrees Celsius. Okay, I am considering that the temperature of the refrigerant vapor leaving the evaporator is minus 5 degrees Celsius. Similarly, the liquid line, the temperature of the refrigerant is somewhere around 40 degrees Celsius. Okay. Now what I have done is I have installed a liquid vapor heat exchanger between suction line and the liquid line. Okay. So what will happen? The temperature of the refrigerant at in the liquid line is 40 degrees Celsius, whereas the temperature of the refrigerant in the suction line is minus 5 degrees Celsius. Okay. So there will be heat transfer from liquid refrigerant to the vapor refrigerant in the suction line. So the heat transfer will take place from 40 degrees Celsius to minus 5 degrees Celsius. So what will happen to the temperature of the refrigerant which is leaving the liquid vapor heat exchanger now? Earlier it is entering at minus 5 degrees Celsius. So there is a possibility that the temperature at state point 1 dash could go up to 5 degrees Celsius. Okay. So that means it has been superheated. I was considering that at state point 1 it is minus 5 degrees Celsius. It is saturated vapor. Okay, it is saturated vapor. So now it is superheated by 10 degrees Celsius, so that the temperature after the liquid vapor heat exchanger is 5 degrees Celsius. Simultaneously, because the refrigerant which is leaving the condenser and entering the liquid vapor heat exchanger, because it is transferring heat to the refrigerant in the suction line, its temperature will reduce. So I can say that the temperature here may go down to say 35 degrees Celsius. One thing is important to note here that the superheating that will take place is of the order of around 10 degrees Celsius, but the reduction in the temperature of the liquid refrigerant is around 5 degrees Celsius. And the reason is that specific heat of liquid is greater than specific heat of the vapor refrigerant. So that is the reason that superheating in evaporator is approximately equal to 10 degrees Celsius, whereas the subcooling, delta T subcooling, this will be of the order of 5 degrees Celsius. So this is just I am giving you a rough idea. Okay. Now let us try to understand what is the difference between the original cycle and this particular cycle. Now let us see. If I take the state point 1, okay, sorry, you can take this red colored one, then the refrigerant is going to the compressor directly. So it is 2. Okay. Now I am considering the original cycle. Then after the condenser, it is at state point 3. And after 3, we are following this line, and then it is coming out at state point 4. But when we install a liquid vapor heat exchanger, then the path is different. So initially we are here on this line. We go through, the refrigerant passes through this path. Okay, this is the path of the refrigerant. So at 1 it is entering into the liquid vapor heat exchanger, and at 1 dash it is coming out from the liquid vapor heat exchanger. It is passing here. It is coming out at 2 dash now. It is 2 dash, and then it is entering into the condenser. After the condenser, it comes out at state point 3 only, but then it goes into the liquid vapor heat exchanger, and then it comes out at state point 3 dash. Okay, so that is the path actually, and then it passes through the expansion device, and then it goes into the evaporator. So blue color line shows you the path of the refrigerant flow after a liquid vapor heat exchanger has been installed into the vapor compression cycle circuit actually. So I hope this is clear to you. So let us now look for that what is its effect on the performance of the vapor compression system. A liquid vapor heat exchanger is also known as suction line liquid line heat exchanger, that I have already told you. In this heat exchanger, the heat is transferred from the saturated liquid refrigerant leaving the condenser at high temperature to the saturated vapor leaving the evaporator at low temperature. Okay, this also I have explained you. Thus, the saturated liquid gets subcooled on leaving the liquid vapor heat exchanger, whereas the saturated refrigerant vapor leaving the evaporator becomes superheated on leaving the liquid vapor heat exchanger. Now, this is the cycle which shows the liquid vapor heat exchanger installed in the existing system. So if I talk about the existing system, the existing cycle is actually 1, 2, 3, and 4. After I have installed this liquid vapor heat exchanger, the cycle changes to 1 dash, 2 dash, 3 dash, and 4 dash. Okay, so it means there is superheating of the liquid refrigerant. Now this is delta T superheating, and the value is equal to T1 dash minus T1. And where it is taking place? It is taking place in liquid vapor heat exchanger. Whereas there is subcooling here, this is subcooling. So delta T subcooling, it is equal to T3 minus T3 dash, and it is also equal to Tc minus T3 dash. So once again, where it is occurring, it is taking place in liquid vapor heat exchanger. I hope this is clear to you. Is somebody trying for permission? No. Okay. So I hope this is clear to you. So we can proceed now. What is its effect on the performance of the system? So once again, you can see it here. If you go for the original cycle, the specific refrigerating effect. This is the specific refrigerating effect, and it is shown on the top also. So it is specific refrigerating effect QE, which is equal to H1, and this is H4. So this value is equal to H1 minus H4. But when we install the liquid vapor heat exchanger, the exit point from the evaporator is same. Means it is exiting at the evaporator at H1 only. Okay. Whereas the entry point to the evaporator is shifted to H4 dash. So that means now the value of specific refrigerating effect. This is the specific refrigerating effect, and it is now equal to H1 minus H4 dash. So that means this value has actually increased because H4 dash is lower than H1. So specific refrigerating effect will increase. Simultaneously, if you will see, this is the compressor, specific compressor work along this line. So initially this is the value of the specific compressor work, this value. Okay, and this value is what? This is equal to H2 minus H1. Whereas in the second case, the compressor work or specific compressor work changes to, now it is equal to H2 dash minus H1 dash. And I have already told you, when the isentropic lines move away from the saturation curve, they are tilted more and more towards the flatter side. Okay, the slope becomes lesser and lesser. So the slope of 1 dash 2 dash is less in comparison to slope of line 1 to 2. Okay, so that is the reason the specific work of compressor by incarbonating a liquid vapor heat exchanger will increase. So this is mentioned here. The specific refrigerating effect has increased, whereas the specific work of compressor also has increased. So what will happen to COP? Now COP dash with a liquid vapor heat exchanger is given by QE dash divided by WC dash, because both the parameters have increased. So we are not in a position to say whether the COP has increased or whether the COP has decreased or remain same. Then we can look for heat rejected in the condenser per kg of the refrigerant flowing in it. So in the first case, you can see from the chart here, state point 2 is the entry point in the condenser, and at state point 3, it is leaving the condenser. Whereas in the second case, it is entering the condenser at state point 2, but the point at which it is leaving remains same, 3. Okay, so in the second case, it is H2 dash minus H3. So as you know that H2 dash is greater than H2. Therefore, heat rejected in condenser per kg of the refrigerant has increased. So this is the conclusion for this particular case. Then let us talk about the volumetric efficiency. Okay. See, if you see this diagram, do you find any change in the pressure ratio? If I say RP is the pressure ratio across the compressor, you know that it remains constant. Okay. And we know that the volumetric efficiency is given by 1 minus C pressure ratio raised to power 1 by n minus 1. So the value of small n, index of compression, is also same, RP is same, C is same. But yes, there is one change here. when we have incorporated the liquid vapor heat exchanger, and that changes that the temperature at entry to the compressor is now T1 dash. When there was no liquid vapor heat exchanger, then the temperature to the entry of the compressor was T1. So basically now volumetric efficiency dash will be equal to T1 divided by T1 dash into efficiency volumetric for the previous case. So this value is lower and this value of T1 dash is higher. This is higher. Okay. So what will happen to the volumetric efficiency dash? It will reduce. So I don't have written it here. So efficiency volumetric, yeah, it is written here. Volumetric efficiency reduces by incorporating liquid vapor heat exchanger. Okay. So when the volumetric efficiency goes down, what will happen to the mass flow rate? In both the cases, Vp is same. Then specific volume, in the second case, when we have incorporated the liquid vapor heat exchanger, V1 dash increases. This has gone up. Okay. So the denominator part has gone up, whereas the volumetric efficiency in the numerator has gone down. So the net effect of these two factors is to reduce the value of the mass flow rate. So it's clear that the mass flow rate, when we have incorporated a liquid vapor heat exchanger, will reduce. So let us see what happens to the cooling capacity now. Now, if you see the cooling capacity is given by mass flow rate into specific refrigerating effect. So in the second case, when the liquid vapor heat exchanger has been installed, you can see this value of specific refrigerating effect has increased, whereas the mass flow rate has gone down. So in nutshell, we can say it's really difficult for us to say that whether it has increased, reduced, or it will remain constant or same. So that is why the conclusion is the total capacity will be either greater than or less than or equal to the cooling capacity after we have incorporated the liquid vapor heat exchanger. Next, we want to know what will happen to the specific work of compressor, not specific, rather power of the compressor. So once again, if you will see, this is the power of the compressor with the liquid vapor heat exchanger, and we know that mass flow rate has gone down, whereas the specific work of compressor has gone up. So what will happen? Once again, we are not in a position to tell whether the power will increase or decrease. Basically, when we employ a liquid vapor heat exchanger, and if ammonia is the refrigerant, in that particular case, COP goes down. So basically, QE actually also goes down in case of ammonia, and WC, this goes up for ammonia. So that is why in case of ammonia, by incorporating a liquid vapor heat exchanger, COP will go down. Whereas if it is R134A, R134A, in its case, the value of QE goes up, WC goes down, so COP goes up. So when we are using R134A, the COP will increase. Now I would also like to tell you, in our refrigerator, we are employing a liquid vapor heat exchanger also. Okay. Another thing that can happen in this particular case is subcooling in liquid vapor heat exchanger reduces the flashing, and that you have already seen. Flashing means the vapor formation is reduced. How it is reduced? This is the pH diagram. Okay. So because of incorporation of liquid vapor heat exchanger, the point 3 shifts to 3 dash, and then after the expansion, this is the entry point, which is 4 dash to the evaporator. If there is no liquid vapor heat exchanger, this would have, the process of expansion would have ended at 4. So that means now this is the X4 dash and this is X4. So x4 dash is less than x4. So the flashing has actually reduced. So that is the advantage of employing liquid vapor heat exchanger. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. So if you have any question about it, you can ask. Any of you can ask. If you do have any doubt about liquid vapor heat exchanger or any of the parameters which we have discussed earlier also, you can ask me any question. Okay, if there is no question, then I can proceed to the next topic, which is actual vapor compression cycle. Now what happens? We have considered the effect of the many parameters. For example, we started from the effect of reduction or increase in the evaporator pressure. Then we have discussed about the effect of the condenser pressure. We have also discussed about the effect of the subcooling, superheating, and then we have also talked about the liquid vapor heat exchanger. Okay, so actually we have discussed these effects individually, but if it is a real system, all these things will happen simultaneously, and it won't be a theoretical cycle actually. Okay, and there will be pressure drops in the pipelines also, in the evaporator also, in the condenser also. So when we include all the things in in a real system, then only it is a actual vapor compression cycle. Okay, so let us see what is written in this slide. Due to flow of the refrigerant through the condenser, evaporator and piping, there will be drops in pressure and the temperature in different components. Okay, so this I have already told you. Further, compression will be polytropic with friction and heat transfer instead of isentropic. So we are considering till now that the process of compression in compressor is isentropic or reversible adiabatic, but that will not happen. Okay, because it can never happen that the surface of the compressor is not losing any heat to the surroundings. So that is bound to happen. That is bound to occur. So this also effect has to be taken into consideration when we are discussing this actual vapor compression cycle. Actual vapor compression cycle may have some or all of the items of departure from the simple saturation cycle. Okay, so let us proceed further to understand how a actual vapor compression cycle looks like. Okay, so if you will see the red lines, then it is a simple saturated vapor compression cycle actually. Okay, and it's really very simple. As you can see, this is the TS diagram. Okay, it is temperature entropy diagram, and the red line on it shows the simple saturated vapor compression cycle, which you already know, and the other cycle which is in black color, black lines. Okay, that is the actual vapor compression cycle actually. So it's there are many deviations in comparison to the simple saturated vapor compression cycle which we have been studying till now. Okay, so let us go one by one, and this diagram shows the actual vapor compression cycle on a pH diagram. Okay, so I think I will start from here only. So now what I am going to talk is I will focus on this diagram only, and I will also draw a schematic diagram here. Okay, so this is the schematic diagram I am drawing here. This is condenser, this is evaporator, this is compressor, and this is expansion device. Okay, I will not put the numbers here because there are number of numbers. Okay, so first of all, what I am considering here is I am starting from state point 1D. Okay, I am starting from state point 1D. So if you will see from 1D to 1C, there have been some change. So this 1D to 1C shows the superheating in the evaporator. What does it shows? It shows superheating in the evaporator. And we have already discussed about it, that superheating takes place in the evaporator. 1C to 1B means from this particular point to this particular state point. So 1C to 1B, it is superheating in the suction line. And you know why the superheating is taking place in the suction line? The temperature of the refrigerant in the suction line is well below the surrounding temperature. So heat flows from surroundings into the suction line, and that is why the state shifts from 1C to 1B. Okay, and then there is a process which is taking place from 1B to 1A. Okay, from 1B to 1A. Now, if you will see this, this is nothing but this shows the pressure drop. Where pressure drop? It is in the suction line. You know, the suction line will have certain length and there will be some friction. So we are considering that there is pressure drop in the suction line, and we are considering that enthalpy remains constant. It's a sort of isenthalpic process in the suction line. So delta P suction line, so it is the pressure drop in the suction line. Then 1A to 1. Now what is 1A to 1? This is 1A to 1 is the pressure drop delta P at inlet to the inlet to compressor. Okay, so why this pressure drop is occurring? See, when the refrigerant is entering into the compressor, it has to pass through the inlet valve actually, and when the piston moves downwards, the inlet valve starts opening. So basically it presents a smaller area for the flow of the refrigerant because its valve is opening actually. Okay, so because there is lesser area and we are trying to take the pass the refrigerant through it. Okay, whereas the pipeline, suction pipeline, is of larger area, the area presented at the valve is smaller, so the refrigerant is flowing from larger area to smaller area. Okay, so it's a sort of some sort of extrusion process. You must have studied the extrusion process. So in extrusion process, what we do, we pass a uh, heated large diameter rod through a smaller hole, and its diameter is reduced, so it's a sort of extrusion. So same thing is happening here in the compressor also. So we are trying to extrude the refrigerant into the compressor. Okay, so this effect is actually known as wire drawing effect. So in extrusion process also we are drawing a wire actually. So here also we are drawing the refrigerant. So it's a you can say wire drawing effect which is causing the drop in pressure, or the extrusion effect which is causing the drop in pressure, because the area at the inlet to the compressor valve is smaller. Okay, then so I hope this 1A to 1 is clear to you. Now let us talk about 1 to 2. Now 1 to 2 is the compression in the compressor. Now it is compression into the in the compressor. So you know that the compression till now we have considered is reversible adiabatic or isentropic process. But do you think that it would be isentropic process? No, it will never be isentropic process, because it will be polytropic. Why polytropic? I will explain you. Now consider a situation that the refrigerant is now entering into the compressor through the inlet valve. So the temperature of the refrigerant, let us say at 1, okay, when it is entering into the compressor at this particular point is, say I consider a temperature say 10 degrees Celsius. Now you tell me, what will be the temperature of the surface of the compressor? During the last cycle, it has compressed the refrigerant, and that refrigerant left at state point 2. or say 2B, okay, 2 or 2B. So the temperature there is high. So the temperature of the walls of the compressor is quite high. It is somewhere between 1 and 2 actually. It is somewhere between 1 and 2. So I can consider that the wall temperature of the compressor is say 60 degrees Celsius. So what will happen? Initially the heat transfer will take place from the cylinder walls to the refrigerant. Okay. So initially when the refrigerant is being sucked into the compressor, the heat transfer will take place from the cylinder walls of the compressor to the refrigerant which is entering into the compressor. So that is one thing. So that means the heat is now being added to the system. Okay. Now in the upward stroke, when the piston moves up, in that particular case, what will happen? The temperature of the refrigerant will start increasing, and at some intermediate state, this temperature could be 75 degrees Celsius or 80 degrees Celsius. So what will happen? I said the cylinder wall temperature of compressor is 60, whereas the refrigerant temperature is 80. So what will happen? The heat transfer will now take place from the refrigerant to the compressor wall. So basically this heat now will flow outside. The heat will go from inside of the compressor to the surrounding. So basically both the processes are taking place. Initially the heat flows from the cylinder walls to the refrigerant, and later on during the compression process the heat transfer takes place from the refrigerant to the cylinder walls, and then it goes outside. So basically the process is not reversible adiabatic, rather it is uh, polytropic process. So 1 to 2 is the polytropic compression of the refrigerant in the compressor. So it is PV raised to power n is equal to constant. Now at 2, the refrigerant is at high pressure. It is at high pressure. So from 2 to 2 dash, what will happen? From 2 to 2 dash, because now the discharge valve opens or the delivery valve is opening. And once again, what is happening in this particular case? Once again, there is smaller area. Okay. So there will be a sort of wire drawing effect here at the delivery valve also, and there will be pressure drop in the delivery valve. So 2 to 2A shows the pressure drop delta P in the discharge valve or delivery valve of the compressor. This delta P at inlet to compressor, you can write it is not inlet to compressor, you can write inlet valve. Okay, it is inlet valve. Then 2A to 2B, what is this? From 2 to 2A, it is pressure drop at the discharge valve or the delivery valve. Now, where the refrigerant will go, it will go into the delivery line or discharge line. Okay, once it goes into the discharge line, naturally because of its length, there will be some pressure loss due to friction. So 2A to 2B shows the delta P value pressure drop in the discharge line. Okay, so this is delta P in the discharge line. Then 2B to 2C. Now at 2B, the temperature is, the refrigerant is superheated. The temperature here is larger in comparison to the surrounding temperature. So what will happen from 2B to 2C? It is the heat lost by the refrigerant in the delivery line to the surroundings. So the temperature reduces from from 2B to 2C. So this is the heat lost in the delivery line. So at 2C, the refrigerant is now entering into the condenser. Okay. Earlier, what we were considering? We were considering that the refrigerant enters into the uh, condenser and there is no pressure drop. There is only transfer of heat from the condenser to the surrounding. So we were considering that in condenser, first of all, it is the refrigerant loses the sensible heat and then it loses the latent heat. That's true. But simultaneously, because of the length of the condenser, there will be pressure drop. So it won't be a straight horizontal line. Okay, it would be a tilted line. So you can see here the red line which is shown here. This is the red line. This shows no pressure drop. Okay, this is the case when there is no pressure drop. But in actual practice, what is happening? There is pressure drop, and we have shown it from 2C to 3. So up to this particular point, there has been some pressure drop which is shown here. Okay, this is the pressure drop in the condenser delta PC. Then from 3 to 3A, from rather from 3 to 3B, okay, 3 to 3B, we are considering that subcooling is taking place in the condenser. So in this particular case, we are considering subcooling is taking place in the condenser. So we are considering a you can say a water cooled condenser, or you can say a over designed condenser, where the temperature of the refrigerant at the exit from the condenser also goes below the saturated liquid temperature. So the temperature at 3B is below that of the saturation temperature at state point 3. Now what happens? The refrigerant, first it goes in this direction from 3 to 3B. Okay, it reaches at this particular point, but then it enters into the liquid line. When it enters into the liquid line, suppose this is the liquid line. Okay, the entry point here is 3B and the temperature is T3B. So the refrigerant is entering in the subcooled state in the liquid line here. So what will happen? The liquid line is exposed to the surrounding temperature, T ambient. And I said you that the condenser is water cooled condenser. And you should always remember, if it is a water cooled condenser, then it will cool the water, it will cool the refrigerant below the temperature of the surrounding air. So if the surrounding air temperature is, if I say is 40 degrees Celsius, then there is a possibility that the temperature 3B could be 35 degrees Celsius. So what will happen? The heat transfer will take place from the ambient to the refrigerant which is flowing in the liquid line. So the temperature at the exit from the liquid line could be, say, 37 degrees Celsius. Okay, so the temperature is increasing. So from 3B to 3C, 3B to 3A, it is the temperature increase in the liquid line. I hope this is clear to you. And at 3A, the refrigerant enters into the expansion device. Could be a capillary tube, could be a thermostatic expansion valve, or an automatic expansion valve. And what we have considered here is it leaves the expansion device at state point 4 and then enters the evaporator. Okay, we have not considered the expansion line because usually the expansion line is very small in length, so we're neglecting that part here. So at state point 4, the refrigerant enters into the evaporator. Now in evaporator also, because of its length, there will be pressure drop. Okay, the refrigerant is evaporating. Okay, the refrigerant evaporates, and when it passes through the evaporator coil, its pressure drops, and you can see this is the pressure at the entry to the evaporator, where at the exit the evaporator pressure is 1D. So this is the drop in the evaporator pressure. This is shown here. Okay, this is shown here. This is the pressure drop in the evaporator. So basically, I have discussed here the actual vapor compression cycle, where I have told you all the points. Okay, so what I will do, let me see the further slides. I think this topic is repeated again and again in those slides. So let me see. Okay, so it says, once again I am going to repeat the deviations from simple saturated cycle actually. So the first deviation it says is superheating of vapor in the evaporator from 1D to 1C. Then it says heat gain and superheating the vapor in the suction line from 1C to 1B, then pressure drop in the suction line from 1B to 1A, then pressure drop due to wire drawing effect at the compressor suction valve from 1A to 1. So once again, this is superheating in evaporator, this is superheating in suction line, this is pressure drop in suction line, this is pressure drop at inlet to the compressor inlet valve. Next is the polytropic compression 1 to 2 with friction and heat transfer to the surrounding instead of the isentropic compression. Pressure drop at the compressor discharge valve 2 to 2A. So from 1 to 2 it is the polytropic compression, then from 2 to 2A it is the pressure drop at the discharge valve. Then pressure drop in the delivery line, heat loss and desuperheating of the vapor in the delivery line from 2B to 2C, and pressure drop in the condenser 2C to 3. So this is the pressure drop in the delivery line. This is the desuperheating of the refrigerant vapor from 2B to 2C, and then there is pressure drop in the condenser. Then it says subcooling of the liquid in the condenser or subcooler from 3 to 3A. Okay, as I told you, this can take place in condenser or it can also take place in the subcooler, and it is from 3 to 3A. Rather, it should be 3 to 3B. And here it should be 3B to 3A. Okay, so heat gain in liquid line is from 3B to 3A. The lines 3 to 3A and 3A to 3B are along the saturated liquid line on the TS diagram, and the constant pressure lines in the liquid region run close to it. So this relates to TS diagram, though I am explaining it on the basis of pH diagram. Then pressure drop in the evaporator is from 4 to 1D. So you can see it here. So 3 to 3B, it is the subcooling in the subcooler. So this is delta T subcooling. It can take place either in condenser or in the subcooler. And then from 3B to 3A, we have the superheating in the, not superheating, heating in the, sensible heating in the liquid line. And then this is the pressure drop which is taking place in the evaporator. It may be noted that the pressure drop in the evaporator is large. This is due to cumulative effect of two factors. Now, what are these two factors? So, what is meant here? Delta P in evaporator is greater than delta P in condenser. That is important to note down. The pressure drop in the evaporator is due to friction. This is called frictional pressure drop. So there are two types of the pressure drops. What are these two types of the pressure drop? The one is frictional pressure drop. Frictional pressure drop. And the second is momentum pressure drop. So there are two types of the pressure drops. So first we are talking about the pressure drop due to friction. So there is a continuous length of the evaporator coil through which the refrigerant is passing. So when the refrigerant passes through the evaporator coil, Because of its length, there is pressure drop, and that pressure drop will be given by 4FL V square divided by 2GD. Just hold for a minute. I am giving you a break for 2 minutes. Hello? इसका क्या है? ठीक है. हाँ हाँ, मैंने आपको नंबर दिया तो था. हाँ, मेरी यूनिवर्सिटी के हैं. तो आपने. ओके ओके ओके, ठीक है ठीक है. तो मैंने इसीलिए बोला था कि आप बात कर लेना. हाँ, मैंने उनको बोल दिया ऑलरेडी. आई थॉट कि आप लोगों ने आपने कर दिया होगा. मैंने आपको मैसेज किया तो था. हाँ हाँ हाँ, ठीक है. ओके, ठीक ठीक. ओके okay. So I was talking about pressure drop in the evaporator. So pressure drop in the evaporator is because of two things. One is the due to friction. So this is the value of the frictional pressure drop in the evaporator. I hope this is clear to you. Now, secondly, as the evaporation proceeds, the specific volume increases. Hence, the velocity must also increase. The increase in the kinetic energy comes from the decrease in enthalpy, and therefore further pressure drop should occur. This is called momentum pressure drop. Okay, so let us try to understand what is the meaning of the momentum pressure drop. So I can consider that the mass flow rate which is entering into the evaporator is given by the formula rho A P, and it can also be written as A V divided by small v. So this is the velocity. This is specific volume, and this is area. Now you consider a situation when the refrigerant is at entry to the evaporator, its dryness fraction is, let us say, 0.1, and when it leaves the evaporator, let us say that its X or dryness fraction is 1, saturated. Now what is happening? The value of X is actually increasing. What is the meaning of it? It means the vapor is increasing. When the vapor increases, what will happen actually? When the vapor will be increasing, the value of small v, specific volume, will increase. Okay, because now in the refrigerant is actually, earlier it was in the liquid form. Now it is changing to vapor, and you know, whenever a liquid changes to vapor, its specific volume will increase. So naturally, we can say that this value goes up. Okay, so m dot is equal to A into V divided by V. So it goes up. Specific volume goes up. What about area of the coil of the evaporator? It is constant. And we know that this value of mass flow rate, this is also constant. So when it is, once m is constant, A is constant, and specific volume is increasing. So what should happen to V so that the value of m should remain constant? It means until unless V also increases, the mass flow rate will not remain constant. So actually, during the evaporation process of the refrigerant in the evaporator coil, the velocity of the refrigerant is increasing. And when the velocity increases, Now, how this velocity will increase? You must have studied the uh, about the nozzles actually. So in nozzle, the velocity of steam may increase, but how it will increase? Only when there is drop in pressure. When there will be a drop in pressure, only then the velocity will increase. So this pressure drop, due to which the velocity increases, is known as momentum pressure drop. This momentum pressure drop is basically, you can say, positive. Okay, so we have two types of the pressure drops. One is the delta P due to friction, which is positive pressure drop, means the pressure is dropping. Similarly, we have delta P due to momentum, because momentum stands for that the velocity of the refrigerant is increasing. So it is also positive. So effectively, the sum of these two will also be positive. Means this pressure drop, if I say is 0.5 bar, then this pressure drop is also 0.5 bar. So total pressure drop in the evaporator is 1 bar. So this is a large pressure drop in the evaporator. Now let us consider the case of a condenser actually. Now what will happen in case of condenser? Now in condenser, what is happening actually is we calculate first of all frictional pressure drop, that will be given by once again 4FL V square divided by 2GD, and it is a sort of positive pressure drop because there is a particular length of the condenser. It's a positive pressure drop. Let us say it is equal to 0.5 bar. Okay, now let us talk about the momentum pressure drop. Now what is happening in this particular case? In case of momentum pressure drop, in case of condenser, the refrigerant changes from vapor to liquid. It is changing from vapor to liquid. So what will happen to the specific volume? Specific volume will go down. So what will happen to mass flow rate? Mass flow rate is constant. It is equal to rho, rather than rho, I can write K into V divided by small v. So this is going down. Specific volume is going down. Area is constant. This value is constant. Okay. Mass is also constant. Area is constant. Mass is constant. So what should happen to velocity? Velocity should go down so that the mass flow rate remains constant. So when the velocity will go down, it is acting as a diffuser. So the pressure will increase. So the second pressure drop is negative actually. So delta P due to momentum is negative actually. Okay. So it could be, let us say, minus 0.2 bar. So what is the total addition? Total pressure drop is now 0.3 bar. Okay. So it's basically negative pressure drop means pressure is actually increasing rather than reducing. So there is a possibility sometimes that in condenser the pressure may increase also. Okay, because if the momentum pressure drop is higher than the frictional pressure drop, so that what will happen in that particular case? It will be a increase in, it will lead to increase in the pressure in the condenser. So that can also happen. Okay, now let us see what is written in the condenser. The pressure drop is not significant, and I have explained you already why it is not significant. Hence, the frictional pressure drop is positive and the momentum pressure drop is negative. It is therefore to be noted that the pressure drop in condenser is not very critical, but it is very much so in the design of the evaporator, as it would increase power consumption greatly or alternatively reduce the refrigerating capacity. You know, when the pressure in the evaporator will drop, so the pressure ratio across the compressor will increase. That is why the power consumption will increase and the refrigerating capacity will also reduce, because if we are going for lower evaporator pressure, in that particular case the refrigerating capacity also reduces because the mass flow rate reduces. The condensers in any case are usually oversized to keep the condenser pressure low and also to let the condenser function as a receiver. So sometimes in big systems, big vapor compression systems, we also have to store the refrigerant to take care of the variation in the mass flow rate. So the condenser also functions as a receiver. So receiver is a component in a refrigeration system where we store the extra refrigerant for its use in the system. However, in the case of evaporators, both undersizing and oversizing are harmful. So we don't go for either undersizing or oversizing. But when we are designing an evaporator, whatever the mistakes there are, that is unavoidable. It may also be noted that due to pressure drop in the evaporator from PE1 to PE2, the temperature in the evaporator does not remain constant. Okay. So naturally, when the pressure will drop, then the temperature on the evaporator will also go down. It changes from TE1 to TE2. So there is a drop in the temperature also. Further, due to various pressure drops, the capacity of the plant is decreased and the unit power consumption per unit of refrigeration is increased. So power will increase and the capacity of the plant will go down. So correspondingly, the COP of the actual cycle goes down. The compressor cylinder is hotter than the surroundings. This is thus it loses uh, heat to the refrigerant. I think this line is not correct, as I have already explained you. In the initial compression process, the heat is being transferred from the compressor cylinder walls to the refrigerant, and in the later part of the compression process, the heat is transferred from the refrigerant to the cylinder walls. So mostly what we do is the compressor walls are water jacketed, so we can easily cool it down. The cooling of the compressor reduces the work of the compression. Freon compressors. No, nowadays we are not using freon actually, but it is freon compressors are therefore provided with parabolic fins built into the body of the compressor cylinders on the outside during casting. The compressors are thus cooled by air by natural convection. Ammonia and even Freon R22 compressor both have this parabolic fins. Friction, however, increases the work of compression. The actual work of compression can be determined by knowing the initial and the final states and finding out n of polytropic index of compression curve. So this is not required actually. The heat rejected in polytropic compression process can be obtained by applying the steady flow energy equation. So this is the formula. This is based on the steady flow energy equation. If we know the value of the W of the compressor, we know the final conditions of inlet and outlet. So either W can be calculated or Q can be calculated. Okay. This is the energy balance of the compressor. It means work of compression is equal to increase in enthalpy of the refrigerant plus heat lost in cooling. So this is the main thing which I wanted to tell you. Now there is a, I think there is a numerical problem. So what I am going to do is this you can read yourself, okay, and this is the solution also. I think if you will go through it, you would be able to understand. So everything is explained here, okay. So I hope you can do this part yourself. The question is given as well as the solution is also given. So I will send you the PPT also, as well as if the recording comes back to me, then I will upload it so you can see it from the recording also. So by chance, if the recording goes to some student, he or she may please send me the link so that I can upload it. Okay. So wait, I will have to take the attendance also, and then you can